Necrons!
Necron Traits. What are the best Warlord traits of 8th edition? Nick speaking, and welcome to this video. Right, in today's Necron video we are going to take a look at the Necron Warlord Traits. We've got two categories to look at, the standard Necron traits and the Dynasty dedicated traits. So let's start off with category number 1, the standard Necron traits. Okay, so the first Warlord trait is Enduring Will, and that allows you to reduce damage on your Warlord by 1 to a minimum of 1. Now I think this is quite useful as maybe more of a defensive Warlord trait, allowing you to reduce the damage by 1, and then of course you've got Living Metal. Now potentially on a Catacomb Command Barge with Quantum Shielding, Living Metal and this Warlord trait, that could really help your Command Barge survive quite a bit. However, is it the best Warlord trait for the Command Barge? Well, we'll find that out a bit later. So that's that one. Let's have a look at the second Warlord trait. Okay, so the second trait is Eternal Madness, and this allows you to re-roll your wound rolls in close combat, whether or not you've been charged, or you charged, or you've done heroic intervention. Now that could make your Warlord a little bit more potent in close combat. In actual fact, I think it's quite a useful thing if you're playing your Warlord more aggressively. Again, if you're just going to sit your Warlord at the back on an objective, it probably isn't the best Warlord trait to take. But I think one thing which is quite clear with these Warlord traits is under the right circumstances, they're actually all pretty good. So let's have a look at the next one, Immortal Pride. Okay, so Immortal Pride. Now this is a bubble type of Warlord trait. It's a 6-inch bubble for Dynasty dedicated units. So if you're within 6 inches of your Warlord, you can automatically pass your morale checks. And on top of that, the Warlord can deny the Witch once per turn. So that's a double whammy Warlord trait that also affects more than the Warlord himself. It affects anyone within 6 inches. So pretty good Warlord trait. But how about Warlord trait number 4? Okay, so the fourth Warlord trait is Throes of the Silent King. This extends your Aurora ability of your Warlord by 3 inches. Now I think this is almost a custom dedicated Warlord trait to a cryptic, extending Chronometron and Techromancer to 6 inches as opposed to 3 inches. Very, very useful when you've got a cryptic on the table. Now potentially with the Canoptic Cloak, extending your range on that guy also could be quite useful. But I think it's definitely a cryptic based Warlord trait. However, you could use it for other stuff, but I think if you've got a cryptic in your army and he is your Warlord, this potentially could be very good. Now before we look at the next one, if you would like to keep up to date with the wonders of Warhammer 40k, not miss a Necron upload, then please give me a sub and hit the bell button so you don't miss a video. Okay, so the fifth Warlord trait is Implacable Conqueror. This is another bubble effect rule, so any Dynasty units within 6 inches of your Warlord can re-roll their assault charge. Now this could be very useful if you're using the Veil of Darkness, really helping that unit get into the assault after the Veil. Potentially also if you're playing Novok Dynasty, this could be really useful. Get your Warlord up front for your Wraiths and your Flayed ones to be able to re-roll their assault. A great Warlord trait. Okay, so let's have a look at the last one. Okay, so the last Warlord trait is Honourable Combatant, and this allows you to have 1 D3 extra attacks on your Warlord if you're targeting the same character with all of your attacks. So once again, this is pretty useful if you're playing more of an aggressive Warlord. D3 extra attacks, that's pretty nice. However, is it the best of the bunch? Well, let's have a little chat about that. Okay, so that's the 6 standard Warlord traits from the Necron Codex. So which ones are the best from there? Well, in my opinion, I think we've got 2 really good standout ones, and that has to be Immortal Pride and Implacable Conqueror. And the main reasons for that is that it affects more than just the Warlord. That bubble effect, affecting as many units as you can get within that bubble, just means that you're making the most of that Warlord trait. I think out of the two, unless you're playing a Novok Dynasty, the Immortal Pride probably has to be the one, especially if you're playing more of a phalanx army with lots of warriors in the army. This is a fantastic Warlord trait to automatically pass your morale. Now that potentially could save you quite a number of command points, as opposed to having to use 2 command points to auto pass. With this Warlord trait you can pass automatically, and gives you the ability to do a deny the witch roll each turn. So I think that's the best of the bunch. However, the others are definitely usable, but the key thing is, are they more usable than the dedicated dynasty traits? And that's what we need to have a look at next. Okay, so let's have a look at category number 2, the dedicated dynasty traits. Now if you have a named character which is from a dedicated dynasty, you do have to take their dedicated Warlord trait. You can't mix and match. But apart from that, you're free to choose the dynasty trait of your choice. So let's have a look at them. Okay, so first up is the Necron Dynasty with the Warlord trait Merciless Tyrant, extending an assault weapon on your Warlord by 6 inches and letting you target characters even if they're not the closest unit. So this only works on an assault weapon, which means, okay, a Staff of Light may be on a Lord or an Overlord, but the key thing here is to use the Catacomb Command Barge. Now if you take the Tesla Cannon on the Command Barge, which is an assault weapon, extended range, so you're looking at a 30-inch assault weapon, strength 6, -1 AP from the Necron Dynasty if you're at half range, allowing you to shoot characters even if they're not the closest thing. So this is a great little sniper. And of course, the Staff of Light can shoot at a different target. Now even better, if you exchange the Staff of Light for the Voltic Staff, you've now got an 18-inch gun that can also cause mortal wounds and snipe characters. Not only that, but all of those guns will be hitting on 2s because of the Command Barge. So this is definitely a great Warlord trait, especially if you're playing the Catacomb Command Barge in the Necron Dynasty. Okay, so the next one is the Necron Dynasty Code, Precognitives Strike. Your Warlord always fights first in the fight phase, even if he didn't charge. If your opponent has units that have charge or that have a similar ability, then alternate choosing units to fight with, starting with the player whose turn it is taking place. So this Warlord trait on the Necron Dynasty, which is primarily a sort of stand still and shoot army, could be quite nice as a bit more of a defensive role. So it could give your otherwise shooty army a bit more bite in close combat with your Warlord, but I don't necessarily think this is an auto take if you're using the Necron Dynasty. I think potentially one of the traits that we talked about, the bubble traits from the standard Necron Warlord traits, is probably going to be your best bet. Okay, so next is the Necron Dynasty Warlord trait, Skin of the Living Gold. Now this is a -1 to hit for your enemy when targeting your Warlord. Particularly useful on a Warlord that may get caught in the open. That's the fast moving stuff, like a Catacomb Command Barge or maybe a Destroyer Lord. Potentially a Cryptic with a Cloak. The units which will be out and about and potentially could get caught off guard. -1 to hit. That's very powerful, a great Warlord trait for that particular dynasty. Okay, so next is the Novok Dynasty Warlord trait, Crimson Haze. And this is another bubble effect. So units from the Novok Dynasty within 6 inches of your Warlord will get +1 attack on any 6s they roll to hit in close combat. This is very nice indeed for the Novok Dynasty. An extra attack on a 6 to hit, and then you get to re-roll all of your wounds. Now you're going to need a pretty mobile Warlord to get this trait off, so you're looking at Destroyer Lords, Catacomb Command Barge. But this is very powerful. Lich Guard, Flayed Ones, Scarab Swarms and Wraiths all benefiting from this Dynasty code within 6 inches of your Warlord. Really, really nice. Okay, so the last Warlord trait is for the Sutek Dynasty, Hyperlogical Strategist. And this allows you to re-roll 1 hit, wound or damage dice on your Warlord per game. Not that great, but okay, fair enough. But most importantly, each time you use a command point, you roll a dice and on a 5+, you get your command points back. No doubt this is a fantastic Warlord trait for this particular dynasty. probably one of the best ones out of all of the Warlord traits that we have. However, apart from the Nihilic Dynasty, all of those Warlord traits really suit the playstyle and the special rules that you get for those dedicated dynasties. So I think on the whole, the dedicated dynasty codes are probably the ones that you are going to choose. However, I'd love to know what you think of that, so let me know in the comments box below which dynasty codes you prefer to use. If you found this video useful of me running over the Necron Warlord traits, I have another video very similar to it running over the Necron stratagems. I'll link you up to that video just there. Check it out if you're interested. And if you did enjoy this video, please consider subscribing. Hit my icon at the end of the video so you can keep up to date with the wonders of Warhammer 40k. Beam me up!